Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Wednesday, January the 8th. And welcome to our commentary. I think the big story in the country today is these fires in California, I guess specifically more in the LA area. I don't want to politicize it too much because there's a lot of people who are, let's just say, a lot of people who are struggling with this. The losses are going to be phenomenal. The numbers of people who could be killed could also be pretty incredible. So I'm just, I'm not going to get into the blame game or whatever they want to call it. But I'm telling you, this is really everything you hear from people who are out there in California, the people who live out there, who are out there, and what they say is they're really talking about some very bad forest management. They think that's really behind these fires. That in the name of pursuing some environmental policies, the officials in California have gone too much to one extreme. I mean, look, everybody wants a pretty environment. Everybody wants to protect every little single species of animal. But there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a point where, you do both. And, some countries do it, other countries do it. You don't see these problems in other countries, but you do see it in California. So again, at some point, I think the people in California at some point are going to have a conversation about the type of people they're voting for, the type of candidates they're voting for, the ideas that they're voting for, because California is not going well. Not only are these fires devastating the city of LA, but their economics is not going well. The state is not going well. They're losing people like crazy. I don't know if you know that in the next census, comes out 2030, that California is expected to lose, excuse me, expected to lose 4 congressional districts. 4 congressional districts. Texas will gain 4. So by the next time we have an election, I guess that would apply to 2032. California, instead of 54, 55 electoral votes, is going to have 51. And Texas, instead of 40, is going to have 44. And you add to that Florida is expected to pick up, I think, 3. That's a red wall there that I think a lot of Democrats are going to have a hard time breaking through. So, it's up to the people of California. They're the ones that keep voting for these politicians. But I think somebody out there has got to, to do something about it. And I think part of the problem is out there when you talk to people is that they say that California is really 2 states, the coastal section, which is very much controlled by the Democrats, especially the more left Democrats. And then you have the rest of the state, which is not necessarily Republicans, but certainly a lot more moderate in their politics. And you have to believe there's going to be a clash at some point between these 2 groups because the state is losing so much because of all of these things that are happening. So our prayers with the people who are losing life, who are obviously losing their properties, our prayers with them, our best wishes for them. But man, what a terrible time to be in LA right now. I mean, if you see that smoke, you have to wonder how in the world can anybody breathe? How can you function? And I guess they're evacuating people, but that's a lot of people to evacuate. LA is a big city, of course. Anyway, I've got a post over at the American Thinker today where I'm talking about President Biden. He's been making these last minute decisions. We heard about the pardons, the commutations, then, the stopping all of this exploration in certain parts of the country. And now the latest is that he's releasing 11 terrorists from Guantanamo, 11 people who were there for a reason. They were there because they were terrorists. They're being released, and I guess there's some kind of an exchange or some kind of a deal that he made or the administration made with Oman, and these men are going to go back. They're going to be released from Guantanamo. Look, the question I have is the question I've always had. When these people go back to their home country or when they'll go back to that region, do we have any guarantee that they're not going to be back in the business of terror? I mean, I remember a few years ago when President Obama released somebody, and then we ran into him in a battle somewhere. I mean, these are people who have spent most of their adult life in the terrorism business. So what are they going to do? They're going to go back and become little league soccer coaches, or they're going to start teaching, English as a second language or something like that. I mean, come on. I mean, we need to, as a country, I mean, we've lost a lot because of terror. There's a reason these people are in Guantanamo, and releasing them for no reason whatsoever other than you want to release them makes absolutely no sense. We have no guarantees that these people are not going to be turning around and fighting against the United States, or fighting against our interests, or fighting against our allies. This is the kind of decision that makes you wonder who's really running the White House. This is the kind of decision that makes you angry. There's no reason to do this, just like there was no reason for these commutations a couple of weeks ago. There's no reason to shut down all that exploration or production in different parts of the country. And if there's a reason for it, then he should have done it before. Don't wait until the last 2 weeks of your presidency when there will be no consequences, at least political consequences, to President Biden or to Vice President Harris when she was running. They should have done this before if they really believe this is in the best interest of the country. But what a mess. What a mess. What a mess. These 11 terrorists are going home. And as I say, I just hope that they go back and do something productive with their life. I hope so, but we have no guarantees that is what is going to happen. Interesting thing is happening in the U.S. Senate. There is a proposal for something called the Laken Riley Act. And Laken Riley, of course, is the young woman who was killed in Georgia, a Georgia University student. I don't remember exactly what university she was going at, but she was killed when she went out for a jog or a walk. And she was killed by an illegal immigrant. So the Laken Riley Act is proposed to make sure that people who engage in that kind of activity are, well, arrested and processed by American law. Well, there was some concern that they wouldn't get to the 60 votes. But right now, I think they have it. And that's because 8 Democrats have already said we're going to vote for the Laken Riley Act. And I think what you're seeing here, not just here, but also the recent remarks by the governor of Massachusetts, when she came down very hard on some of the illegal immigrants in her city of Boston and some other places. I think what you're seeing here is that Democrats are actually listening to public opinion. Democrats are beginning to realize that this immigration chaos that the Biden administration has created, first of all, it's not really about immigration. It's not about, anything, political asylum or anything like that. I mean, this is crazy, chaotic stuff that they've brought to the United States by opening the border. So I think a lot of Democrats are beginning to realize that opening the border is political suicide. Opening the border is political suicide, and letting all these people in and engage in all this kind of activity is political suicide. So that's why I said, and I said it a few days ago in another video, and I'll say it again. I think you're going to see a lot more bipartisanship between Republicans and Democrats on immigration and on the border than you have ever seen before. And the answer is simple. The answer is very simple. The Democrats are hearing from their constituents that this has to stop. And that is why all of a sudden you have 8 Democrats who are going to go along and have already said they're going to vote for the Laken Riley Act. 8 Democrats plus 53 Republicans gives you 61. You get it out of the Senate and you send it to President Trump, who will obviously sign it and turn it into law. So that's, again, I'll just repeat, I think what you're seeing more and more Democrats is that they're starting to listen to their constituents, who are very angry with all the chaos that this immigration policy or open border policy has created. As I've said many, many times, and I've said this in Spanish TV, and I've said it here on the podcast, the issue is not immigration. The American people are not anti-immigrant. What the American people are is anti-chaotic situations like what we've lived in. When all of a sudden you've got school districts who don't have enough teachers because all of a sudden they move thousands of people into their district and they don't know what to do. Well, how are they supposed to have all these teachers from one day to the other, okay, for students who don't speak English? They can't. They can't just increase taxes or come up with these resources overnight. So it's not that the American people, it's not that the American people are let's say anti-immigrant or whatever. That's not the issue. The American people are very generous people, and they'll support legal immigration, but they're not going to support this kind of crazy, chaotic situation that we have been living under for the last couple of years. I understand that President Trump is over at the Senate this afternoon, or the Congress, talking to, I believe, members of the Senate today. And I think it's extremely important that the Republicans get their team together and hit the ground running. That's super important so that they can pass some legislation that they can then put on the president's desk. And I think it's also very important that they force Democrats to vote against some of these rules that they're voting against. So let's see what happens. I'm sure that they'll come out sometime today, and we'll have a chance to hear what they have to say. But I think it's a good move for the president to be talking to the Congress and to the Republicans in the Congress and try to get as much off the ground as possible before he begins in roughly 15 days or less than that. I think 13 days, 14 days, 13 days, and he will be the president of the United States. So I'm glad that they're putting it all together, and they're going in as a team, because they're going to have to do a lot of teamwork to get a lot of this stuff done. Well, today we remember Elvis Presley, who was born on this day in 1935. He died, of course, in 1977 at the age of 42. What can you say about Elvis Presley that hasn't already been said? I mean, probably if not the greatest American vocalist or performer of the 20th century, certainly in the top 2 or 3. But Elvis was not just a great singer, but he was a great entertainer, which is the reason that his popularity continues to live. I saw an article recently. In fact, I wrote a post about this, talking about how Elvis Presley's music continues to sell, how his music never really went away. Unfortunately, he passed away very young, but the music is still going almost 50 years after he passed away. Elvis Presley's music is still selling. His image is still selling. I mean, the guy is he's a classic, as they like to say. So we remember Elvis, who was born on this day in 1935 in Tupelo, Mississippi. How is that for a trivia question? Or Tupelo, Mississippi. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but he was born in Mississippi. The king of rock was born in Mississippi. So there you have it. Elvis Presley, 1935. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.